Hello, everyone. Welcome to the very first MVP Interactive webinar. My name is James Giglio, the CEO of MVP Interactive, and I will be your very gracious host today. As you are aware, today we are going to talk about how to drive revenue through AI and AR experiences. So I'm very pleased to announce a wonderful panel of guests that are thought leaders in not only the sports, sponsorship, and technology space, but also in brand management. So today we're just going to kick it off by introducing our esteemed colleagues and guests. Michelle Roguso is the head of experiential marketing for CAA. Michelle, welcome. Thank you for joining.
Thanks for having me.
It's nice to see you. And next, we're going to introduce Christine Stahl, who is the head of product marketing for Intel Sports.
Hello.
Hello there. Thanks for joining. Great to have you. Next, we are going to pass it over to Don White, who is the CEO of Satisfi Labs.
I love this square introduction thing. Hi, I'm Don.
Yeah, it's the big reveal. He's going to be the troublemaker of the group. But without further ado, we're going to bring in Amir Zonozi is the president of Zoomph.
All about the squares. Let's go.
All right. And bringing up the rear here, we are going to introduce Bob Lynch, the CEO of Sponsor United.
Thanks, everybody. And thanks for having me as last. Appreciate that.
Well, you know, that's the closer, right? That, you know, if this was a comedy set, you would be the headliner. How's that? So real important, before we get into the questions, I just want to encourage all of our guests while we're going through the room, going through our questions, please be sure to ask your questions right there in the chat. We'll have about 10 to 15 minutes at the tail end of the webinar to kind of go through your questions. So really excited to see what the audience has to say. And I can guarantee our experts here will be able to satisfy all of those questions. So as we get into it here, so before we get into the future, we obviously want to talk about how we've all had to adjust through this past year in the pandemic with COVID. Now, as someone who runs a technology company in live events in sports, this was pretty challenging, as you can imagine. So we had to get very smart with how we brought value to our marketplace and our clients. And so AR experiences, web AR experiences was one that really seemed to take off. And, you know, as we look back in the history of technology in our time frame, I believe web AR is going to be one of those marquee technologies that are going to be in parallel to, you know, this time frame and what brands were able to do to connect with their consumers and drive revenue through these web AR experiences. And so Michelle, you know, given your background as the head of experiential for CAA, working with a host of brands, you know, you were really forced to, you know, obviously adjust how you and your company serviced your clients. So why don't you talk to us a little bit about the type of technologies that you had to adjust and really get into transitioning through COVID?
Sure. I appreciate that you didn't use the word pivot, because it's like the last word I ever want to hear ever again. But yeah, so I sit within the CA brand consulting group, specifically helping brands think about how to activate their sports and entertainment sponsorships. And so the first thing we did when COVID hit and everybody, you know, and we were in quarantine, was really thinking about the safety of consumers and fans. And so for a brand, and as they were thinking about it, you know, we were advising them first and foremost on safety. But quickly from that point, the conversation switched to, well, how do I maintain a dialogue, and how do we maintain a connection with these consumers and fans? And it was a very smart question, but we were also hearing, how do we take what was already planned for as a live event and make it a digital or a virtual event? And it wasn't really the right question, because they didn't necessarily translate in the right way. And I think what we all saw very quickly was the rise of Zoom and live streams, which was ultimately this sort of passive experience. And while it was a really great initial way to maintain that conversation with consumers. What we realized is it didn't offer the ability to be immersive and interactive, which was really when we started to turn to companies like MVP to better understand what some of the more sort of innovative technologies and how we could sort of leverage that to build deeper emotional connections, considering the circumstances we were all living in. So, things like integrating chat functions and polls and trivia seemed sort of simple, but actually were so impactful. And while we were doing that, we were also parallel pathing along with our colleagues internally within CA Brand Consulting on looking at both from a data and analytics perspective, how do we sort of negotiate make goods to reallocate some of those contractual assets to support this way of connecting with consumers. And then, of course, from an insights and cultural and consumer trends, really making sure that we had, if we didn't already, had clarity around what were some of those passion points, so that, when you're sitting in front of a computer all day and you've got multiple screens and Amazon deliveries and CNN alerts, how do you keep people engaged? And so really diving deeper into the insights of the consumer and what their passion points are, we started to develop plans in collaboration with our tech partners to really bring that to life kind of cohesively.
Right. And so a lot with insights and analytics, the main driving technology there is artificial learning or AI or machine learning. And so although that there's a lot of magic on the front end, the technology on the back end is really what drives that insight and really helps your brands, learn about the consumers. So with that said, Amir, if you could just talk a little bit about what your company does, and then maybe speak to how your platform sort of ties into the analytics piece and in terms of social and what you've experienced over the past year.
Oh man, James, you messed up having me go second. I'm going to talk the whole thing. So just tease me at any time if I nerd out a little too hard, but awesome question. And Michelle crushed it, right? I mean, it's all about data. It's all about understanding consumers. How do we fit in? If we know the fan better, we can provide a better experience. At the end of the day, I mean, the main shift here is sports teams are no longer event companies. They're media companies, and we're finding ways to engage and interact with these fans. We use a number of different technologies to help inform brands, teams, leagues, and agencies on how to best understand, one, the fan, who's there, who's engaging, who's interacting, what do they care about, and then two, understanding the performance of their content that is more and more living on digital, whether it's an AR activation like the Titans Bureau Wall. You guys did amazing stuff with Tennessee Titans with MVP Interactive. What is the value of that for brands that are getting involved? What is, to them, what is that interaction? So one is we're using AI, and that's merely just robots helping us do things that people used to do by hand with a stopwatch, believe it or not. And I feel like an old man just even being able to reference something like that. But we're just leveraging AI to identify logos and assets. So as partnership deals are being made, they got contractual assets, whether it's the basketball stanchion or court signage or field signage or the tarps that was big during during the whole COVID and everything. So we're analyzing that media content, and we're understanding what the value is for the exposure, the clarity, the logo size, basically decoding attention and brand recall. How do we effectively understand if fans are interacting and engaging with it? And then we use machine learning and different technologies to understand the people behind that, and audience analytics. And so there's a number of ways of using these different technologies to at the end of the day help articulate the value. But at the end of the day, it's the content that is so critical and important. And so that's, why I say you have to focus like a media company when you're in the sports business is you see The Last Dance, you see Drive to Survive, you see content. Everyone says attention is 9 seconds. Well, explain why I binge, Netflix series like it's nothing, right? It's the quality of the content and understanding that value of it. So whether it's, and I want to steal Christie's thunder here with TrueView and what Intel Sports is doing with providing these dynamic, sort of experiences that are immersive. But we need to understand the differences. We need to segment this. And that's what we do. At the end of the day, we're the nerds behind the screens, helping understand what the value is and helping understand what fans want.
Sure. And Amir, quick question. Given the year of being home and how we consumed content changing, with your social analytics platform, did you necessarily see a spike in any particular tranche of industry with brands that really were out in the front end of, social engagement and what that amplification or impression rate looked like?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's everyone had to, I'm so sorry, Michelle, pivot, right? Everyone had to change the plan of how they interact with digital. It was the only safe way to interact with fans. Social content just took it to the roof. Everyone saw the opportunity here. I mean, the pause in live sports, that enough showed how important it is, how it's a fabric part of our culture. Talking about passion points with what Michelle was saying. I mean, it's people get tattoos. It's stronger than some people's relationship to their own religion with their sports team, right? That sense of community and understanding. The only way to interact was digital. So we saw a lot of organizations get really clever and creative with how do they reach fans at homes? How do they keep their attention? How do they provide experiences that they will remember, right? Whether it's an augmented reality sort of experience through an Instagram story, or they go to a physical location, it's safe and they get a digital immersion. But there's a blending that's happening between digital and physical. And that catalyst was us being at home, us not being able to be in person, and humanity found a way to find connection, find, that way to grow. A lot of great brands did a lot of exciting things. To really push the conversation, to really push that ability to fan hard, right? And I'll give credit to Christi again, right? Like with TrueView, and I don't want to steal her thunder, but like that is just one of the most immersive ways to get involved and really understand that space. Understanding questions like where people are streaming, where people are interacting. Satisfi Labs is doing some really great stuff there. Bob's helping everyone understand what relationships are working or what trends are happening within the sponsorship space. How can brands be creative? And Michelle's helping people understand on the brand level, well, what really works and what doesn't, and how can we take this to the next level? I think everyone here has had a role in the shift of everything that's happening. And on our side, we're just seeing fans want to engage digitally. They will. Social media is a great opportunity for them. It's a great opportunity for the brands to understand what do they care about. And apologies to the brands, but they're not there to save the sport anymore. It's an advertising play, right? They want to, what have you done for me? How to engage? And for them, to leverage that connection between fan and use it through a digital experience, they need to show that this is helping them move their product service in some kind of capacity. And I just think that the toothpaste is out of the tube. We're not going back to what it was. And that's okay. We're evolving and we're changing and we're creating these digital experiences. Helps us better understand the fans because now it's all digitally able for us to pull that information insights. And I think fans are couldn't be happier. I think you're seeing engagement levels rise. We just put out a report in NASCAR. They saw 19% increase in Gen Z interaction, esports and what they're doing there. It's this is fun. This is exciting, and I want more digital. And I'm a little biased, but I mean, I think this is this is pretty awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what excites us, and speaking for Michelle as well, as someone that's in Experiential, is now really being focused on that holistic picture where it's not just at event or in venue, but now what it is pre-event, what it means digitally, what it means post, and really having that holistic picture. So you had mentioned Intel and Christi a couple of times, and I'm really excited to learn a lot more about this TrueView product that Intel has rolled out and deployed. I previously knew and experienced the actual technology, despite not knowing its name. So Christi, before you go into explaining TrueView, if you could tell us a little about your role with Intel and what TrueView does, and then how you were able to actually work with Amir and his team at Zoomph and gather the insights through the AI.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and thanks for setting the stage for me, Amir. That's super helpful. So I head up product marketing and partner marketing at Intel Sports. And so I've been here for about 5 to 6 years, and really we've been on this journey trying to work with our partners, which includes um, leagues, teams, broadcasters across the globe to create these new immersive media experiences for fans. We've really seen over the last 5 years this trend that fans, especially younger fans, they're looking to go digital, they're looking for snackable content, they're more and more on social platforms. And so we're trying to work with our partners to create these new engaging immersive experiences that give fans interactivity, personalized content, and new perspectives. And so I think in the chat, they were going to post an example. It's always easier when you're talking about video, just to show the video than try and explain the video. So feel free to watch that now or later after this. But really, TrueView, the platform that we've built, it leverages volumetric video, artificial intelligence, computer vision to be able to create these virtual views of the game so that you can really reconstruct that play and see it from any perspective. So as a fan, I can get down in the quarterback's shoes and I can look left and right and I can better understand the decisions that he made. And then I can switch and I can see it from the receiver's perspective or even the referee's perspective. And so it really gives me the ability as a fan to have that choice and control and deeper insight. So we've been on this path, and I think what happened during COVID last year is it just really accelerated the demand for digital content. With this shortage of game content, we had, we are installed in 40 venues around the globe. And so these partners came to us and they were like, oh my gosh, our fans are so hungry for sports content and we want to be able to deliver more to them. So what we were able to do was to go back with some of the game footage that we'd captured in the past. And if you capture it once, you can produce it in an infinite amount of ways. So we were able to compile some new stories, some new matchups, and these new interesting perspectives of plays to allow teams and leagues to be able to post those on their social channels. And so what we've done is we've been working with Zoomph to understand the value and the lift and, do fans really engage more with TrueView content versus other standard highlights? And it also, tells our partners and potential brand sponsors the value that TrueView content gives to fans. And so we have some measurements in place. We have some case studies with Liverpool that shows that we're getting a 3.5 times the lift as compared to some other standard highlights. So it's been super helpful to be able to understand those metrics. And we're just really excited as we move forward into this year. I think that there's more opportunities to give even more interactivity into the fans' hands.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always have to laugh to think about current and future generation of game watchers or sports fans, and being able to have that video game type of experience while watching a live sporting event. Your product is really amazing to kind of really bring that to life for a lot of gamers and people learning a particular sport. So great to hear that technology has been creating so much value for not only the viewing audience but the brand partners and your obviously your brand in terms of bringing that technology to light. So, which leads me to my next question. And this one's for Bob. Bob, prior to, Sponsor United is a platform that allows you to kind of find research strategic brands and sponsorship and where individuals are spending money, so to speak. What has been the trend in terms of what your platform allows, or what the change has happened over the past year in terms of what brands are sponsoring and what platforms they're using? So any other background in terms of what your platform does, please do. I once again butchered it in my short introduction there, but so why don't you go ahead and handle that one?
Well, I think as Amir is almost like if you were Google Maps, he's going to tell you the best and fastest way to get from point A to point B and maybe avoid a lot of the pitfalls. What we're trying to be is essentially the entire Google Maps. So we're trying to sort of just track the infrastructure of everything going on. I think the one constant within the advertising and sponsorship industry has always been change. And certainly the last 15 to 18 months has accelerated that change. I think things and innovations that were going to take place just sort of were forced to take place much faster, and sort of recognizing that the sponsorship industry ultimately had to evolve to compete with the media and the digital industries in order to survive and thrive. We wanted to sort of be the entity that essentially could track these changes in real time to inform people of how these shifts are taking place. And so fortunately, while all this was going on with this rapid sort of change in how partnerships were done, we in sort of real time want to see how those shifts are taking place in terms of the assets being utilized, the creative being executed against, sort of the things outside of the measurement component of that, of like just eyeballs to logos, or sort of the engagement level within that. We're more generalists of like anything and everything that could be done in a deal. We want to be able to have that information. And so for us, while there was a tremendous amount of change taking place, what you had was this unbalance within the industry where obviously everything sort of shifted out of the physical space into the digital and the media space, which created this total unbalance of clutter, of people trying to do make goods. At the same time, brands that might not have had saw diminishing returns on having their logo sort of on the eighth tarp that they didn't necessarily need because people knew who some of these brands were. So what was interesting for us was the vacuum that was created allowed a lot of emerging and sort of challenger brands and categories to enter the space, which I think one of the reasons we saw that was just the massive amount of venture money that's being spent right now in general in the industry, and the amount of M&A that's taking place has sort of infused a lot of these challenger brands that you might not have heard of a few years ago coming in and planting a flag in the ground, seeing that opportunity. With that, though, they brought a philosophy of what a challenger brand and industry does. It's not just about buying this commoditized asset and signage. It's how do we leverage this across multiple channels that's going to drive our business? How do we become part of the content that's driven as well? And so one of the really interesting things that we saw were how brands were starting to become part of the story, part of the content. And I think, Amir could probably speak to this as well within the social space. We work with about 97% of the teams and leagues utilize our data. One of the things that we heard from them was they're having to create additional content. They're having to utilize organizations like Intel that can help them enhance their content. And they had to do this in a really fast period of time. And so with that, oftentimes they're relying on their brands to sort of help them storytell, to tell a more authentic story against this. And we even saw leagues like, fan-controlled football league is probably a good example of this, where they were really allowing some of the brands to come in and help to enhance the story or try things that they've never tried before. That was probably one of the biggest things that we saw. The on-site activation space obviously went down to zero, and there's about 3,000 brands within major pro sports that had an on-site activation at a physical venue across the 152, 153 teams. It's only back up to about 1,300 brands now, so things are starting to ramp back up a little bit, but certainly very far down. Whereas in the digital space, there was a plus 700 new brands that had entered that space. So we saw obviously sort of a shift over into the digital space, but with that, it wasn't just about more banner ads, more video pre-roll, more of the same sort of thing. I think that's where you started to see some of this web AR, some of these things like, I think we saw Pizza Hut just do this the other day. It was with a radio station where, if you essentially download you can use the box, sort of download the game, you can get a free pizza or a discount on those things. And so they were sort of bringing value to the table to these sports organizations as well in a big way. So you see just a very big diversification of how these partnerships are coming together now.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you touched on that, because obviously as someone that has done a lot of work on the concourse space, and with the way sponsorship works, with the venue in itself, did you see a trend in terms of where brands were looking to leverage the team for make good opportunities with these technologies? You had mentioned the web AR, but any insights that your platform allowed to say, hey, maybe this is a new category for us to monitor, given that there was a bit of this pause on the sporting community?
Well, I think the two biggest areas that we saw was brands started to accelerate sort of their social causes was big, storytelling was big, co-branded content. I'll kind of add on to what Amir said around sort of these teams. And I'm a big believer, coming from the media space into the team space about 10 years ago, about, being sort of a media company. I'd probably take it one step further and say, they're really a content company that has all these different distribution points that are continually changing, from TikTok to, whatever it might be. And I think that fluidity of how these things are changing is taking place right now. But one of the biggest things we saw was, how do we utilize these organizations to tell more authentic stories within our own controlled channels, within their channels, or even building channels together, such as what Under Armour and actually iHeartMedia did. They created a podcast series that they sort of built together. So you're starting to see sort of these joint ventures that are coming together to sort of create new ideas. The Philadelphia Eagles launching podcasts as well. That's one of the bigger areas that we've seen.
Yep. Great. Well, Donnie, this leads me to you as our resident AI expert. If you could tell the group, no pressure, but if you could tell us a little bit about Satisfi Labs and what your platform and engine does, and maybe navigate your story in terms of knowing that there had been many experiences that you have been able to gamify through your AI channel to where we are and where you've trended to maybe adapt to the environment now. So if you can give us a little bit of background on that, that would be fantastic.
Satisfi Labs is a conversational AI platform. Our vision was to essentially white label Google for brands, and we picked sports teams and venues as our first tranche. Now we're in a lot of other industries as well. The application, though, when you think about Google and all the things that it learns, why couldn't the brands learn that directly? So the application is, we actually build a team of virtual assistants, all like mini AI bots or experts that can digitally converse with the customer and learn a lot about them, either respond with an answer or drive them to a purchase decision. The transformation, not a pivot either, Michelle, I agree with you on that, is the technology learns. So in 2020, when all the live events went another direction, obviously we didn't have to handle a lot of questions about where do I buy a ticket. The questions transitioned to, well, how do I follow this player on TikTok? Or how do I watch or live stream batting practice? Subscriptions, like media subscriptions, started to come out. So our product has like a venue assistant, there's a parking assistant, and there's ticketing assistant, even a season holder ticketing assistant. Now there's a media assistant, and the engagement section of the AI is growing rapidly as those questions have changed. So we had about 6 million unique questions trained in the system before COVID. 50% new had to be trained. So 3 million new questions had to be trained because the fan's journey has changed. Our whole goal was to make information accessible and actionable to manage the customer journey. That customer journey now starts with either a trip plan or an experience plan. So asking questions before. Everyone here mentioned new content. Well, how do you make that content accessible? And if you're relying upon a third-party engine to do that, you are now blocked from the interaction and the data. By the way, Google's on my board, so don't worry, they know I have this story as well, and they've invested in it, literally. So just as you think about content and think about us, we believe we're making it actionable and accessible, because that's the next layer. All these things are coming out. I love what Christi's doing, and there's a lot of cool opportunities there. And then how does the fan get that in their hands quickly? I think that's one of the things that we're focused on in the coming months.
Absolutely. And so from a technology and messaging standpoint, we have moved into this contactless environment, right? And so when you set out your platform using AI as whether a front end experience or just a quick messaging tool, it's interesting now that it's such a prominent focal point to the way our lives are probably going to change indefinitely, right? In terms of this one-on-one communication tool with your device without any other contact with an individual or some other component. And so as we've seen the QR code, for example, an old technology reemerged as a new and such a prominent technology. We've developed a lot of gesture-based 3D tracking technologies in the past, which now we can, from a marketing perspective, call touchless, but generally producing the same type of environment and experience for the fans. So it's really interesting to see how all of our paths, moving forward, some of the things that we have planned for in the past may have not been relevant at that time, but now as we set our path forward, they're just more important than when we initially thought. So on the future, before we're going to open it up to the group here, but since we're talking about the future, and Amir touched on this earlier about the holistic nature of what brands and companies should be doing and thinking about in-venue, at event, as well as the at-home digital experience. What excites you guys the most about the technologies that are out there? Bob, you've referenced the Pizza Hut app. We have seen that. WebAR is going to be a great tool in any environment. So I'd like to ask you guys, is there anything maybe on your roadmap from an Intel product standpoint, from an Intel perspective, or Michelle, some of the things that you're hearing from your brand? So I'll leave it open to the group here.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Christi.
Sure. I'll start and just quickly say, yeah, there's a lot of amazing opportunities that we feel like we could explore using volumetric video. Again, if you kind of conceptually understand that we're capturing the play, this 3D construction, I mean, there are a lot of options where as a fan, you could go and walk around on the field as the play is unfolding around you. And that could be with a VR headset. It could be with a tabletop experience. That's one of the awesome things, is that volumetric video can stretch across all devices, AR and VR. And so I think that there are a lot of opportunities, and we'll look forward to building those out as we learn more about, what are the fans most interested in and engaged in, and where our customers want to go to. So I think there's a lot of exciting opportunities there.
Yeah, absolutely. And it shouldn't go understated. I'm glad that you brought that up in terms of how powerful the Intel platform is in terms of capturing this volumetric video, because in a traditional sense, what that essentially means, as Christi had mentioned, is you're getting filmed from multiple angles in 360 with hundreds of cameras, right? And so Intel has been able to really consolidate all of that workload to a handful of cameras throughout a stadium. And so to kind of recreate that in an instant is just mind-blowing, even as a technologist, to understand like how what's possible and actually what it does at the level and the degree it has. So kudos to the Intel team, and that's very exciting. So
yeah,
Michelle, yep.
I was just going to add too, I think beyond fan experiences, there's just really exciting use cases that we're exploring as well with partners. I mean, everybody always asks me, well, what about officiating? And of course, coaching, player health and safety. We have the ability to do skeletal tracking, and with the sensors that are surrounding the field. I think there's a lot we can impact in the entire sports industry beyond fan experiences, but it's an amazing place to begin.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Michelle.
Sure, thank you. What I was going to say is, as brands are starting to talk about what their re-entry strategy looks like, how do they start now to think about, activating at a live event again? What I'm most excited about is how much the consumer behavior has changed in that utilizing technology is no longer a nice to have, but it's just a part of the everyday experience. So something as simple, and something that wasn't, I think previously, pre-COVID, was considered almost dated, but the QR code is now so common and in every single person's daily use that it also is coming in incredibly handy for the live event experience. So there's so many usages of ways to, provide, again, that deeper experience, a deeper connection, behind the scenes content, all sorts of ways to, leverage the ability to be contactless in such a simple technology, but that now is, I mean, my mother can use it when she's at a restaurant, reading a menu. And if she can do it, like literally anybody can. So I'm just excited about the fact that we can now leverage these technologies in a way that's very natural and authentic to the experience, as opposed to having to educate people on how to use it, on top of all of the other objectives we have to reach as a part of that experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a really good point. You referenced the QR code and bringing old technologies to the new, and we think about future generations, and, the amount of sheer education that they are being raised on with technology is super exciting, and how advanced and almost innate. It's like there's a little part of their brain that they just get it out of the womb. And so it's going to be a fascinating future for technology and how we connect with the technology. I think you're spot on in how QR codes can drive engagement using, even blending technologies together. And, I reference WebAR for the audience. That is a tool that allows brands or technologists to develop AR experiences without the need for any third-party download. And so I'm really excited for some of the projects that we have in queue that will be able to leverage volumetric filming and data from, an asset to be created in an experience, all on web without any heavy lift of a download. And so you don't worry about any level of app fatigue from a consumer standpoint, or, hey, am I going to be challenged with getting people to attend this event and then download that event app specifically, where the QR code just breaks down that barrier of entry, right? And so I will give a shout out to one of our clients, the Tennessee Titans. Amir had referenced that, but that's exactly what they did. They at the end of the summer last year, where the NFL was sort of in this transition period, they kind of ran it up to the schedule. They weren't sure if they were going to allow fans in. And so the Titans did a great job with a community outreach program that they leased a building downtown Nashville, and they commissioned a local artist. And they really just highlighted and just gave a shout out to the community about the resilience of what Tennessee as a state, it had to overcome with natural disasters, and obviously the start of the season and COVID. And so they made it a themed mural, but we were able to make it come to life through augmented reality with simply putting QR vinyl stickers on the sidewalk. And so it didn't just speak to a football fan per se. It allowed any pedestrian or tourist to interact with this mural. So really a powerful tool moving forward. So before we move on to questions from the audience, and as a reminder, please put those questions in the Q&A here in the webinar. I do see some here on the chat, which I'll read, but anyone else want to kind of speak to the future, or do you just want to get right into the questions here?
I'd like to throw one thing in there. What a story of adversity for the QR code, right? The world laughed at it now. I mean, help connect everyone. I got two little kids growing up. I'm gonna tell them to be a QR code when they grow up, but believe in themselves. So, one thing is, it's the technology is adapting, but then also the people behind the technology, right? And you saw advancements like Snap just recently. They had a camera that's more inclusive, that shows different light tones of skin, right, to help pronounce that. And we're also seeing more women in sports tech. So I'm gonna have to go for women in sports tech. I'm on the board, something I'm very proud of being affiliated with. But we're seeing more people behind the technologies, and that's one thing, that there's like a bias that's out there with AI and different products. The people creating them, you have to account for different ways and different types of thoughts behind the people. The more diverse the input is, the more productive and greater the output can be. And so, that's one thing that I'm very excited about. During the pandemic, we've seen a more of a shift in priority in women's sports. We're seeing more just inclusivity that's coming out of this. And with the technologies, we're seeing, just more diversity around this. I mean, it's, this is sports, it's tech. Historically, it's just a bunch of white dudes on a panel, right? And we've got some great diversity here. And that's, I think that's something we also have to task on ourselves to push even further for technology to go more. I mean, there was a question in the Q&A of like, did you guys expect some of this stuff and how has that changed? We didn't, but like for us to be ready for what's coming next, I think we have to think about how can we get more people in sports technology? How can we have people rethink what we already currently have to make it better, to make it change? Bob said a nice quote, like, the only thing constant is change, right? And it's going to adapt. What we're doing today is going to be different in a couple of years from now as well. And to get there, to get to the next level, we need more people in here and in this space. So it's not just the technology that's changing, it's also the people behind the scenes building the technology. And I think that's one thing that we're seeing more focus on. And I think that's a trend that I'd like to see more of as well.
Absolutely. And it always starts with an idea. That's step one. And a good idea comes anywhere. So I definitely appreciate that statement there, Amir. All right, so let's open it up to the group here. I'm just going to go ahead and read off some questions. So this is like the live round. All right, panel, are we ready here? Okay, the first question is coming in from Greg. Greg, have we seen a decline in team and league spend on outside marketing agencies and services? Are they pivoting their spend from venue to even more digital? Some of the things we touched on a little bit, but Bob, do you want to kind of touch on that one? I feel like you have some insight there.
Yeah, we work with about 300 brands and a couple hundred agencies. We have seen from the brand side, in many cases, sort of a cutback, a pause in terms of some of the services that are taking place right now. And even within their internal staffs. And I think whenever that happens, there's more of a reliance on third-party data services that can sort of fill that gap in the meantime. And I also think it's sort of made brands think differently about how their relationships with agencies work and what's truly critical during sort of, I guess, wartime versus peacetime as well, and what those needs are. And I think a lot of agencies are quickly sort of moving towards serving their clients in a very different way than they have in the past.
All right, great. Anyone else want to add color on that one? All right. Next question from an anonymous attendee. How have we all seen AR and AI impact your companies since their inception? Donnie, I feel like that would be a good one for you.
It was the inception was as an AI company. I think the thing you don't anticipate is the amount of applications that AI can have. Like, AI is such a big word. It's like saying I have a website. I mean, it means 100 different things, whether it's, AI for what? Like, I always ask people, what's your application for AI? Like, is it the video? Is it, picking the right highlight time statistics? I mean, we work with other AI companies even to make our own. So from inception, yes, it was obviously the core of our business. I think it's progressed to a point where now people are looking to buy differently. Transactions are changing. A lot of our focus, to answer that, is voice AI. So how can you make all this content accessible without seeing? So I might want a highlight sent to my phone, but I just want to ask Siri, or I just want to ask Google Assistant, my bias today for obvious reasons. So how do we make it all accessible is, I think, our focus, but it has always been the core. I just think the rush of applications is coming now, and now we just speak it, whether it's what Amir's doing or what anyone's doing. What is the application for AI? That's the real question to ask.
Very fair. It's one of the sort of qualifying questions that we ask our clients as well when they are tasking us with producing a VR experience or an AR experience, and going through those qualifying questions on like, what does that actually mean? Or what are you trying to accomplish with these technologies? Christi, did you want to add anything to that note in terms of where Intel's roadmap went?
Yeah, I mean, I think really with us for AI, again, it's all about what is the application. And I think for us, as we're looking to create new, unique perspectives of the game, being able to have AI in the production, obviously, producers and film people understand how to produce the game, but incorporating AI allows us, you know, how do you know where the ball is going to go before it's even thrown out of the hand of a player or kicked into the sidelines? And so those are ways that we see our technology continuing to get more and more sophisticated with AI.
Absolutely. Okay, moving on to the next question here from an anonymous attendee. Do you always plan on utilizing these technologies to drive revenue, or were you able to shift your company vision upon the advancement of AR and AI software in the recent past? With that in mind, and based on your daily use of these technologies, where do you see AR and AI in the near future, and how do you see your company continuing to utilize and expand their role to cut costs and drive revenue? I think Donnie covered that. Amir, did you want to reference anything here?
No, I mean, I'll just nerd out a little bit on AI. I think that, you know, that, and like you said, it's a website. It's the same equivalency, it's the application, but I see the application of it growing and advancing. Maybe not my kids, but their kids, you know, God willing, knock on wood, you know, raised by, you know, teachers that are AIs, right? Helping adapt to understand what teaches them how to be more effective, using the technology from wearables in sports. You know, all of this is going to continuously advance, and it's going to get more and more sophisticated. You know, I think it's going to be less and less of a you know, shock or anything of the nature of AI. And then to the question of, you know, and James, I think you'll speak more about this than anyone. I mean, it's like to constantly engage and interact with fans, you constantly have to adapt and be on the latest innovation and find new ways to interact. It might be the same principles of connecting with emotion. You guys had like this really awesome activation I saw just recently with Elvis, right? Who would have thought like Elvis and AR, you know, like what, like Elvis, I'm thinking like the oldest thing in the book, but like, and there was like Elvis serenading people. Like I mean, it's constantly evolving. It's constantly changing. It's not that we were looking out to build AI or AR. It's we're looking to solve a problem for our customers. We're looking to solve a problem for humanity, right? There's something that's out there that we're trying to change, and we're going to use the most latest and innovative tools at our dispersal to integrate that, to build it, to make it happen. I think it's more about adaptability, less about like the technologies. And we're talking about them because right now they're the latest and greatest, but you have to constantly have your finger on the pulse, constantly educate yourself, constantly listen, like, you know, what Donnie's doing with Satisfi Labs. You know, Google's got an interest in it, right? That's something that he's sharing that because we think of Google as the end all be all. And if they're interested in it, you should be too, right? All of this technology is just a matter of adapting and understanding. And to do that, you just have to constantly be listening to your customer or the problem that you're solving it for. You know, for our side, we didn't set out to be an AI company, but we just listened to the challenges that our customers were presenting us with. And we looked at how do we build to answer what they need? How do we bring ones and zeros to, like, you know, from Uber and Lyft, you know, hailing taxis, they created apps to make it something that now we get in exchanges of cars that we've been on the internet, something we would have never done 20 years ago. So it's constantly going to adapt, it's constantly going to change. But the best solution, or the best way I can answer that, is you have to constantly be talking to your customer, understanding what their problems are, and then just staying on top of how, you know, these tool sets are changing.
You may not have used Uber, but I've seen you hitchhike down 95 in the past. So, I mean, it's just the way the technology has moved us forward from less risk, right? But you do bring up a good point in terms of leveraging technologies, these in particular, to solve a problem for an individual, a brand, or a consumer. And so you would reference Graceland, and that was exactly it. They came to us and said, you know, listen, we have an aging fan base. You know, what technologies could we integrate into our complex that can draw a new generation of fans? And so, you know, that's exactly what we accomplished for them with an array of technologies ranging from, you know, tactical gesture-based experiences to a host of AR and VR experiences. So yeah, it's spot on with that. Right, next question. Happens to be a VR question, and this is from Connor Gates. With the increase in popularity of VR headsets, as well as users being able to attend sporting events virtually, do you think there will be a time where companies can buy advertisements within the virtual reality world? If so, what do you think this could look like? Great question.
I could probably take a crack at that. We're already seeing advertising in the virtual world related to apps and NBA 2K and other sporting events that takes place. And I think maybe it was Amir or Don that mentioned Drive to Survive, and there's an extension of that with the Formula One racing app and the logos that you see within there. So this is something that's already been done in other places. Really what it comes down to is you have to have the audience to make it relevant for the advertisers. So the thing that has to happen first is there needs to be a scale of engagement and usage within these different platforms, whether it's virtual reality or any sort of app or digital world. If the audience is there, brands will follow. And you'll have brands that'll be early adopters to that space. So it's already been done in other places. So I see the transition into that world pretty seamless.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the first insight in that is esports, right? And you see the power that the publishers have in these gaming studios, that the in-app purchases and the ability for viewers or participants to engage. And now sponsorship is getting involved in the digital or metaverse, if you will, within esports is a good insight to the future on where brands are going to integrate. I think VR live streaming sporting events, the technology still needs a couple of years before it becomes a real scalable and viable option, but without question that the capability is there, and that's a trend that we're certainly going to see with the North Star somewhat driven by esports. All right, so we probably have time for one more question. Just looking here, what has been the best use of AR, AI that you've seen in the marketplace, whether it's one of your companies or outside? Well, Bob already said Pizza Hut. That was one of your.
I'll use an example because sometimes these executions fall flat and sometimes they work well. And I saw it was not in person, but on YouTube, I saw at AT&T Cowboy Stadium, they had an AR fan experience there in the stadium where you could actually go and pose with your favorite player and then post it out socially. And it was just, it looked really fun and it was really well done. And it allowed for more social engagement with friends. And so I thought that was a really well done execution.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the power of an experience that had pre-existed or a technology that had been reincarnated and certainly went viral because of the stage that it was on. And yeah, great execution all the way around. Michelle, did you want to?
I was just going to build on that with Christi actually took the same example I had, and I think we've seen it now with some other teams. The Saints did something similar last season as well, and I think one of the parts that make it so successful is tapping into the talent and really leveraging the fandom of the team, but particularly the players is, and that I think that's really helped with seeing sort of the scalability and overall, sort of success and results of that type of an activation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure you can appreciate this from a production standpoint. We had developed an experience like that for the Clippers, but we were shoehorning media day as our way to capture the players. And so we literally had agents with a 30-second clock, telling us when we could film. So there wasn't much interaction, but we made it work. It was a great experience, and Clippers fan enjoyed it all last season. So we are at our time, guys. Thank you so much. This has been really insightful, really fun as our inaugural webinar. So I hope to see you guys soon. The audience members, thank you. Please reach out. We can circulate the contact information for each of our panelists, but maybe why don't we conclude there? So starting with Michelle, if you want to, provide any contact information, any Twitter handles or anything like that, or if not, just say goodbye.
Or just through LinkedIn is a great way to connect. So easy enough. I'm right there. So feel free to reach out.
All right. Christi?
Yeah, same here. Christi Stahl. You can find me on LinkedIn, Intel Sports. I'll probably pop up.
Okay, and you can tell by Amir's background, he's big on social and gaming. So there we go.
No, you mentioned failed technologies, and I had to pull this thing out. I mean, because like Google Glass was pretty cool at one point. Actually, it was probably never cool, but I think where we're going though, like with when Apple gets into it and what Snap is building on the back end with like, you know, some of these digital, there's like Twitter accounts to share, but I'll shut up. I know the show's over. So Zonozi on all things social, tweet me, let's talk, let's have fun.
All right, Bob.
I'm only on LinkedIn, so Bob Lynch, Sponsor United, should be pretty easy to find. I'm always looking for page views, so I'm probably posting something.
Wonderful. And Donnie.
Yeah, Don at satisfi.labs.com, LinkedIn as well. And the phone number of the company is my cell, so please don't call the office. I get telemarketed to death as it is.
All right, wonderful. And I'm James Giglio. You can find me at James Giglio everywhere. And thank you so much. And until next time, we'll see you again.